This episode of Tipping Pitches is brought to you by Anchor. Do you like this show and you want to make your own? Let me tell you about Anchor really quickly. Alex, Anchor is a podcast hosting platform that is free to use. It's what we use here at Tipping Pitches.
What's great about Anchor is they will handle the distribution entirely for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, etc. You don't have to get your hands dirty with any of that.
They partner with advertisers to sell ads and make money on your podcast. It is everything that you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Tell us a little bit about what you saw and being able to relay that message to Cora when you watched Kimbrel pitch and kind of help out so he wasn't tipping his pitches.
So tipping pitches, we hear about it all the time.
People at home understand what tipping pitches is all about.
It's amazing. And
That's remarkable.
Alex, I have an important announcement for our listeners.
Yes, sir. Hit me with it.
And you, maybe. I've been requested for comment for a feature article about lefty baseball podcasts in the New Yorker.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to go down this route, but
I love watching the life go out of you when I make a joke that you just don't feel like engaging with.
I know.
That's one of my favorite feelings as a co-host.
Oh God, are we gonna have a dirtbag left conversation on here? I wasn't meant to be prepared for that. It's
which one of us is dirtbaggier? Tipping Pitches hosts ranked by dirtbagginess. Go.
Yeah, right. Well, I probably
rank us.
I probably got out of bed later than you. Even normalized for time zones, I probably still got out of bed later than you.
Normalized for time zones?
time zones plus.
Bro, I was up at 6:30 this morning, so I think you did get out of bed later than me.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you probably could have got out of bed at a normal time, and we still would have been there. But
no, we're not going to have that conversation, and nor are we ever going to mention the New Yorker ever again on this podcast.
Nope.
Hopefully. What we are going to do, however, is we're going to have an entire episode about hats. That's right. Fitted caps. We spend an entire episode talking with two guys who are more so members of the hat community than you and I are, Alex. It's Benjamin Christensen, who works for Hat Club, and James Hollis, who considers himself a newfound collector of hats since the pandemic. And, the reason we wanted to do this is because hats have been a bit of a conversation point over the last few months on Twitter, specifically the New Era caps and some of the gaudier designs that are sort of shocking to the eye of the average baseball fan who is like, I bought my team's hat and then I never bought a hat again and never thought about it again. And we wanted to understand that. We wanted to understand what need New Era was trying to fulfill. And I'm not sure that we totally got the exact answer. But what we did get is a greater understanding of why this has been a trend in the last couple of years. And really just what the hat community is.
Yeah, I really, both of these guys brought some really interesting perspectives on either side of the conversation, on either side of the aisle. One who works in the industry and kind of has knowledge of how these things bubble up from the ground up and where these designs come from, and one as an outside collector, as just an amateur hat collector who is interested in the style and interested in the fashion of things. But neither you nor I are that deeply embedded into the hat community. I mean, we just kind of, throw on our floppy A's or Mets hat and just go to the game. And that's the hat. And there's a real irony in us putting out this podcast the very same week that we released our own cap. It is not a fitted cap.
Just a dark irony.
Dark.
When you factor in the sad fact that we made a typo on that design, Alex.
Well, you didn't have to spill it to the listeners. We're reliving the trauma.
If you listened to last week's episode and you rushed to the Tipping Pitches store at 2 p.m. Eastern time, I still don't remember if it was Eastern Daylight Time or Eastern Standard Time. One of our listeners was nice enough to tell us, and I've already forgotten. You did not find a hat unless you were the one person who ordered a hat before we realized that there was a mistake on the hat. That is because we just made a small mistake. Mistakes happen. We are fallible, and we have since corrected that. The hats are back up. So if you went and you bought a shirt, and you also wanted the hat, my apologies, but head back to the store if you have not seen the hat design. It is really cool. Alex did do a really good job. Unfortunately, it is a dad hat, which makes us fucking washed in this conversation, in this episode. Like, everybody was throwing shade at dad hats the entire podcast.
Yeah, I didn't really have the heart to bring up the fact that we just released our own dad hat, but
listen,
that's okay.
We're not members of the fitted cap community. That's okay. What we are is people who didn't do our hair on some days and need something to put on our head. And there are plenty of us out there. You know that? There are plenty of us. There are dozens of us.
Yes, 100%. So these were really great conversations, obviously spurred by the multitude of times over the last year in which New Era caps dropped. Baseball Twitter flamed them. In certain cases, the hats were pulled due to the overwhelming negative reaction. But we were curious, who's buying these hats? What's the market for this sort of thing? And maybe as baseball fans, are we actually behind the curve? Because it turns out, yes.
Spoiler alert.
The answer is yes.
Okay, Alex, we're going to go to our conversation with Benjamin Christensen, who is a community events and engagement manager for Hat Club. But I wanted to give a quick disclaimer first that this podcast was recorded a week in advance. So before you start listening to the rest of this episode, if we haven't brought up the fact that insert all-star player here got traded to the Mets, that's why. Just go to my Twitter for those reactions. Our apologies, but Alex and I are traveling the week that this podcast is coming out. So this was recorded on July 26th. Let's go to that conversation. But first, I am Bobby Wagner.
I am Alex Baisley.
And you are listening to Tipping Pitches.
All right, Bobby. We are joined by the one and only A's Twitter legend, Benjamin Christensen. He's a community events and engagement manager for Hat Club, and I think he's also just known on baseball Twitter as the tatted up huge A's fan. I think I am. Correct me, Benjamin. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're totally 100% right on that one.
Thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah. We've been wanting for a little while to do an episode about hats and the discourse that has unfolded over the last year around them, especially on baseball Twitter, which can be an absolute minefield to
big time.
I wake up to this,
navigate.
like, I live on the West Coast, Alex lives on the East Coast, and I wake up to it and we're already at like 40% of the way through the discourse by the time we wake up. I don't know, Benjamin, if you live on the West Coast or not, but every time I wake up, it's like, here's 17 designs that people are just whining about. So we're here to kind of sift through some of that stuff.
Oh no, it's great. I'm an Oakland native, and so much like you. I mean, when I wake up every morning, and it's usually between like 6 and 7 a.m., and I jump on Twitter, and it's just like somehow I'm 20% behind on the discussion that's going on. And since all my work is revolving around hats, and it's just like, oh my god, I feel like I'm behind already. I got to really jump into this and throw some education behind it for everybody. So
some people wake up to like they're behind on emails, and you wake up like you're behind people's takes about New Era.
It's a blessing and a curse every single morning.
Well, so as I mentioned, your day job is with Hat Club, which is, I'm not even going to try and describe it. I will let you do that. Can you talk a bit about your role with Hat Club, how you got involved with them?
Oh, absolutely. So I've been with Hat Club since 2014, and I originally started as a assistant manager at one of our stores in Daly City, so South San Francisco area. 2015 is the point in time when the owners and the front office basically for Hat Club, came to me and they're like, "Hey, you seem to be pretty good with Twitter. Do you wanna run our Twitter account?" And so we had a brief meeting about that as far as, okay, what direction do you want me to go with this? And there's like, you just go ahead and figure it out on your own. I'm like, okay.
The best instructions.
Oh my God. I mean, and going back to the blessing and a curse, I mean, it was a struggle for the first couple of years as far as, trying to find our voice, just because, as chatty as I am through my personal account and as colorful as I can be on my personal account, trying to find that middle ground of engagement, but also, throw a little bit of, myself into it as well, because, there has to be some kind of anonymity behind it. And because most social media managers, don't come out, don't use don't talk in the first person, basically. And, for the first couple of years, I didn't. A couple of people in the hat community kind of knew who I was, as far as like the person that was running that. But then over like the last year and a half, as Hat Club like really came onto the map as far as being a staple in hat culture, everybody kind of realized like, oh, hey, I know Benjamin, and so it's much less about, on interactions on a daily basis, people just being like, hey, Hat Club or whatever. It's literally people throwing my name into every single tweet because they know I'm the one behind it. And so it's like, all right, well, I guess the wizard is no longer behind the backstage door, doing this. It's just like I'm out in the open on stage. And so that was an interesting transition over that last time period.
Alex, do you feel like you're a wizard when you man the Tipping Pitches Twitter handle, or do you just sort of feel like...
I kind of do, yes. There's a
power there, right?
There is. And oftentimes people aren't necessarily, because we share the login duties, there's a bit more of a mystique but behind our Twitter account, I think, sometimes, unless we're tweeting
I'm going to start trying to catfish
DH,
people into thinking that it's a take from you. I'm just going to start trying to like throw in random Oakland references.
So we want to kind of get into the Hat Club's role in hat culture, and all that stuff. But before we dive completely into that, I am curious, kind of your background as it comes to hats. Our listeners are not able to see the glorious wall of fame behind you that must be more than 100 hats just lining your wall.
143 on the nose behind me.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's only like 10% of my actual collection. So you're a little dedicated to this, one might say. Yeah. What drew you to kind of Caps in the first place? Can you trace that history for us? Yeah. So my first job in baseball goes back to 1999-2000. I was the bat boy for the now defunct Bakersfield Blaze of the California League. So the first fitted hat that I ever scooped up was the old 1995 through 2000 Bakersfield Blaze hat. They were a Giants affiliate at the time, so the next hat I got was the Giants. And then I started kind of like moving into other teams just because, hey, I kind of like fitted hats. I was 16, 17 years old at the time. So I picked up a, old 80s, early 70s Phillies hat, the 1969 through 1991 Pinwheel Montreal Expos hat. And so that was kind of the core of my collection for like a number of years. Every now and then I'd pick something up new. 2000, I moved up to Pacific Northwest. I finished high school in Vancouver, Washington. And at that point, I had gotten on with another company called Just Sports, which previously was called Pro Image. So built my hat collection a little bit there. Then I worked for Copeland Sports, if anybody actually remembers that. That's predominantly going to be a West Coast-based operation on that one. And then after that, went back to Just Sports, built my hat collection up a little bit more. So I was probably at a solid... like 30 or 40 by the time 2007 rolled around. I enrolled at the University of Oregon to start my journalism program there. And then it really was like 2010 where I kind of woke up one day and just looked at, the few hats that I had. And it's like, it'd be kind of cool if I owned like at least one of every major league team, just because I'm a dedicated, devout baseball fan. yeah, I'm an A's fan, but at the end of the day, it's like, I just prefer baseball really more than anything as a whole. So I did that, got through all 30 teams, grabbed a couple of the old school umpire hats. And then same thing. I had a moment of reflection again. And it's just like, screw it. How about if I just get every single on-field hat that's ever been played in Major League Baseball history? And that's when it exploded.
That's a jump right there.
It was a huge jump. But it was funny because, I did that. 2011, I started getting all my Major League Baseball tattoos that, a lot of people, at least on Twitter, have come to know me for. And then that platooned me into a job with Major League Baseball at the now defunct MLB Fan Cave in 2012. So never in my life would have thought like, oh yeah, collecting hats and getting baseball tattoos would land me a pretty sweet gig. And then when that came to an end, went back to school, finished up my last term. I started a baseball hat blog explaining the history of every single hat that I own, stats and jersey numbers that I used to write on my hats. I haven't done that so much over the last few years, but just kind of give my own personal story behind each and every hat. Because at the end of the day, I mean, what I always kind of go back to that as far as like why I had such an affinity for hats was to me, it's a wearable piece of art. I mean, yeah, it really describes, the character of the person based on the logo, based on the city that the hat represents. But, more importantly, it's one of those pieces of clothing that can really tie an outfit together. And it sends more of a message of that person's dynamic, that person's attitude. And so that's why I've always kind of stuck with hats.
I love the way you put that. It's a wearable piece of art. And I think that I'd like to kind of start there and focus it a little bit on baseball and some of the caps that have been coming out recently and the discourse around them and kind of why you're here to talk about it. Because I think that, we're as guilty as anyone of seeing a hat that we just see scrolling through on a timeline and not envisioning how it might fit into a larger collection or how it might fit into a larger trend in the hat community. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of break down this discourse cycle that we keep alluding to that I think our listeners know, and I think that but what is like the one thing that as external looking in members of the hat community, we're not, Alex and I are not, we like baseball caps just as much as the next guy, but I would describe us as like dudes wearing dad hats to baseball games. Like we don't have a greater understanding of the fitted caps and snapback caps and things like that. What is like the biggest thing that the people who are kind of getting on Twitter and griping about these hats and these designs and how kind of like over the top some of them seem to us, knowing just the regular design of baseball caps, what is the biggest thing we don't understand about that?
I mean, okay, I'll flat out admit, like there are some pretty god awful baseball hats out there. Like I'm not going to beat around the bush on that one, but everything in life, especially when it comes to something that we see on a regular basis, when clothing, especially shoes, jerseys, t-shirts, whatever, it's an evolutionary process. It's all done by experimentation. And for a lot of the designs, and I'll kind of go more specifically about the one that really, the two more specifically that were the kind of the tipping point for, our conversation. There was that, team script in the old English with the team logo that was in the backdrop. A couple weeks ago, I had talked with Fangraphs about that one. And then most recently, there's the Oakland A's one, black and silver, baby blue underbill, which the baby blue underbill was like in my opinion, the weirdest part of that design. But then they threw the graphic of the Golden Gate Bridge on the front, which made absolutely no sense. And then on the back, a lot of people asked me about that because, there was a drink. And on the Hat Club account, I went through that and I'm like, well, it's kind of interesting that the most factual part about this hat is the drink on the back, because I think it was supposed to be a Mai Tai, which was invented in Emeryville, which is just south of Oakland at Trader Vic's. But if you look at the graphic, it looks like a whiskey sour. So it's like, all right, somehow they managed to bumble that. They were on a decent path with this. But in that, grand scheme of things, it's like, I look at it, I'm like, I don't know who the hell thought this was a good idea. And so, me working in the hat industry, it's like there are a lot of things that we've put out that at first, even I look at it and it's like, okay, I don't get this, but I'm curious like how the market is really going to respond to it. And the first thing I go back with Hat Club that really kind of kicked things into gear for us was 2019, we started putting pink underbills on hats. And that was a creation between two guys. Frosty Preem is his stage name, and Justin Farnham, who used to run the New York store, but now he's one of our lead designers. The two of them collaborated, put that on. Specifically was a 1996 World Series Yankees hat. So just a straight navy blue, white logo, 96 World Series patch on the side, but a pink underbill because it was a personal connection for Frosty because his mother had passed away due to breast cancer. And then the 96 back patch specifically because he was born in 96. So that was the first experimental run for that. And, the day they dropped it, boom, sell out immediately. So it's like, okay, what's the next step we take from there? And they started incorporating more teams. And then it became different underbill color logos. And then, as time kind of progressed, we go into COVID, but even look a little bit before that, Justin started experimenting with some other colors like, oh, hey, an all dark green hat with a pink underbill. What are we going to call it? Oh, green eggs and ham. So I think there's a lot of intelligence that goes behind a lot of these hats, but as long as you can tell a story behind it, as opposed to just, oh, hey, we're just screwing around with these colors. Let's just see how this works, which a lot of other companies end up doing. They're really poor at storytelling, which is what, the one thing I'm really blessed about working for Hat Club about, because we don't really take a lot of heat for that. As weird as some of our hats may seem to, people who aren't really well versed in the hat game. And then you go into these last couple of weeks and it's like all these other designs that are coming out because, oh, hey, let's find some logos that connect with these cities and experiment with these different typefaces and stuff. And so, the execution isn't as fluent as it may seem in the designer's brain.
Yeah, I think that's really great context to these conversations. And, as you were talking, it seemed like I drew out a bit of a distinction in some of the hats that are out there, right? Because there are these, like you say, like brands that are, independent of New Era, but purveyors of fitted caps like Hat Club. And there are plenty of other stores around New York, around the country that do this same thing, right? And it seems like New Era has opened up a lane for designers to actually partner, right? And get access to whether it's color schemes or patches or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And they are allowing independent designers to come in and tell that story, right? Whereas it seems like, and I could have the incorrect read on this, but these New Era hats are presumably, done in-house, where that's it's just a New Era designers conversation saying, hey, what can we, what else can we put out there? Is that a fair distinction that I'm making?
Yeah, I would say you're probably about 75% of the way there. I think there's one thing that I forgot to mention in regard to this. And so, sticking with like all these like random patches and stuff. So, the key point that a lot of other, shops in New York and across the country, so your Lids, your Sports Worlds and stuff like that, we all have an account with New Era. So, there's a licensing contract that we all have to sign. And it's really whether or not, New Era has the licensing rights to do a lot of these things that we kind of want to do. We have to get team permission to anytime we distort colors and stuff like that. So there is a chain of command that kind of comes with that. But at the same time, there are, these other artists who will buy all these New Era hats. They don't necessarily have an account with New Era. Like they'll just buy, like on-field hats or, just basic pink underbill, whatever, from all these other stores. And then they'll kind of sew on their own little specific designs. So going back to that old English, typeface across the front with the logo, there's been a number of artists over the last few years who have done that. And, they'll end up selling them for like $100 each, because aside from the fact that they're paying, $35, $40 for the hat themselves, maybe they're getting a wholesale discount, but that's whatever. But because they're adding their own touches to it, that's where they add the value onto it. And so that's why the hats go for as much as they do. So New Era will kind of look at these things that all these other artists are basically doing to their own product. And it's like, hey, yes, we're making money off the hats that were sold to this particular artist who then decided to do their own thing to it. But why cut out the middleman when we can do the exact same thing? Because New Era owns the rights. They own the licensing deals with these things. So if they have their own in-house artist staff who can just basically replicate exactly what all these other artists are doing, it's like, shoot, let's do it. And, we at Hat Club, and I'm not really trying to like hype up Hat Club as much as it seems like I am, but it's just, we look at that kind of stuff and, we'll steer away from it to an extent because, those are design and artist ideas that, weren't put together by us. We don't want to go out there and just like steal other people's ideas. Some other places kind of do, but, that's their own thing. I'm not going to hate on them for it. But, New Era, being their own brand, it's like they have to, make their money the way that they can. And so, like I said, if they're kind of cut out the middleman in the whole process of this, and just kind of do it in-house themselves, then of course they will, because they have the right to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you help me understand the hat market as you describe it? Like a hat goes up and then it immediately becomes a hot commodity. Well, two things. Number one, what do you think makes a hat sell out instantly to like a lot of other people? And then the second thing, for you personally, what makes a hat an instant buy?
Oh, man. All right. Yeah, because that's going to go night and day on that one. So as far as when a hat goes up, so I'll just kind of go based on the last year and a half as far as like the trends that I'm seeing. It's really become less about the team and more about logos that are being used. So, because for years and years and years, like the New York Yankees NY hat in any capacity is the best-selling hat of all time. Mm-hmm. But as we found in all these different color schemes that we've been putting together and using different patches and using different logos, the interesting thing is that in a lot of cases for a lot of teams, the alternate logo, not so much the primary logo, is what sells better. So by that, I mean, we'll take the Chicago Cubs, Detroit Tigers, and what's another one? I'll stick with those two because it's easier to do. So, for years and years and years, the majority of Detroit Tigers hats that were coming out are just going to be, D logo. Yeah, maybe in a different color. Yeah, it's going to have a different patch, whatever. But then there's a whole cycle of different logos that the Tigers have had historically, whether it's the, 1980s Tiger head, just the head where it looks like it's screaming, the eyes wide open. I call that the tripping ball tiger because it looks like it's tripping on LSD. And then my personal favorite, the 1967 alternate, which is the swinging tiger, which 9 years ago, my best friend in Detroit, Jay Tui, and I dubbed it the coked out tiger. And somehow
seems to be a theme here.
Taken off the name. What's that?
Seems to be a theme here, Benjamin.
It really is. Yeah. And it's just, I mean, not to say that, we're huge drug addicts or anything like that, which we're not, but it's just, it's that weird incorporation of like all these little things in pop culture that kind of come together. And for me personally, as far as like why we kind of came up with those names is, let's look at historically at baseball and all these weird moments, like the 1980s cocaine trials, Doc Ellis throwing a no-hitter on LSD. Like there have always been these components of baseball that, aren't talked about in pop culture the way that I would like to. I mean, these were all things I talked about in my blog, 2013, 2014. So throwing these kind of names together and just kind of like cramming it out into the populace of the hat world, like to me, that's been interesting. And seeing how these dumb little names that my friend and I kind of created have, really taken off. So that's one part of it. And so anytime we do a drop, like I already know in advance, it's like, okay, if we're dropping 17 hats, so like yesterday we did the hats we dropped are called the mint condition. So it's like a mint blue, black bill, kind of a black, white, metallic gold, logo on the front, gray underbill. The Cubs, we had the old sleeve patch logo from the Ryan Sandberg era, where it's just a little bear face. Anything we make with that logo, instant sellout. The White Sox from the 1970s with the little batter logo that kind of looks like the MLB logo. Everybody loves that, instant sellout. But then you have all these other mixture of other teams that we're still using primary logos for. Yeah, they'll move quick, because it's, fans of the team that are buying them. And so there's always going to be that component of it. But then more importantly, just because, like Supreme, like sneaker culture, Hat Club, for whatever reason, And once again, I'm not hating on it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around a lot of it is what's in. And so, just throwing the Hat Club name on anything. And so it becomes a combination of, obviously hat fans who want to wear and buy these. Then you're going to have the resellers. And then you also have dudes that are using bots because for the same purpose of just buying it just so they can flip it for more money. So somehow the Hat Club name in itself has gained more value because of that. And so, a lot of other companies are kind of seeing very similar trends with that as far as the hats they're coming out with as well. But I still don't think it's up to the capacity that Hat Club is doing. So that was just question one. Question number two, as far as the way I see it, I'm still kind of confused by it most times because I don't buy every single hat that we drop. I still have, my favorite logos that we use, my favorite teams. I don't necessarily go out and buy every single A's hat, even though that's kind of what I used to do. But for me, because, every single day I'm usually wearing like an old champion NBA jersey, I'm going more based on, okay, what can I match with this in my day-to-day wear?
Yeah.
So since we're not on video, technically, I'm wearing a Vancouver Grizzly jersey, which actually does match perfectly with that color combination that we dropped on Saturday. I end up buying the White Sox one just because I like that logo a little bit better. And that's, of course, the White Sox logo I have tattooed on me. So it's like, oh yeah, there's a perfect combination going on right there. But yeah, every drop we do, there's like 2 or 3 in the mix where it's like, I really like that. But I don't necessarily go out and buy every single one just because I'm for one that still adheres to, I'd rather other people eat first rather than myself. If the hat craze is still going to continue going, I'd rather other people take advantage of this, get what they want before I serve myself.
So, I mean, you say if the hat craze kind of keeps going, and I'm kind of curious what you see as the coming down the road in, fitted cap culture, right? Because I mean, this is a culture that has existed for a long time, but as you alluded to, it's really taken off in the last couple years. So is it just having its moment in the sun, or do you see it really carving out a corner in the culture similar to, sneakers?
I think this is going to be going for a few more years. This was something I had kind of predicted was going to happen back in 2000. The prediction I made was in 2017, but the way I visually saw it was going to happen, I thought it was really going to take off in 2019, which it kind of did. But I would still say, COVID for 2020 is when it really exploded. And so what I go back for on that is 2017, we were still in the dad hat craze. We were still coming off like the snapback craze because as everything, kind of happens within the fashion world, it always comes in cycles. The 90s were really revving up. And for a lot of us who, I was born in 83, so I remember the early 90s of, people really starting to get into fitted hats at that point in time. Hip hop culture was kind of taken over with it. It wasn't necessarily driven just based on baseball. It's movies and music and art and all these other little components that kind of, drive into it. The one quote that I always give to a lot of people in regard to, how much outside of baseball culture has really shaped hat buying is the Jay-Z song Empire State of Mind. And there's the line, I can make a Yankee cap more famous than a Yankee can. And it's really true because as we in the United States just kind of look at this, baseball is a top 3 sport for us. And so baseball fashion is always just kind of in the minds of everybody. But if you look at outside of this country and see, Japan and Mexico and even, bits and pieces of Europe, and dudes and women are wearing Yankees and Red Sox hats, they're not necessarily fans of the team, but it's just, no, it's a piece of American iconography that I can wear and really, show off like, hey, this is a piece of fashion. This isn't necessarily just a piece of athletic equipment anymore. So, as things kind of evolve from there, I don't see, fitted hats necessarily slowing down, at least for a few years, but then, kind of looking into it, and it's like, okay, what are we going to transition back into? And I'm not hating on snapbacks or dad hats, but I just feel like there is, like, they kind of had their moment in the sun. but fitted hats have been around since, realistically since the 1940s and before, as far as 1970s, more specifically, as far as, people being able to buy them. And this goes back to the old Sporting News ads that New Era used to run back in the day. And so because of the fact that, fashionably, we can do all these different colors, we can do all these different colored underbills and all these components that can match up with sneaker culture, which is still hot. And that's going to stay hot for a while. I think, I'm not saying that baseball hats necessarily going to catch up to the level of sneakers, but it's going to be pretty close.
Okay. Benjamin, final question for you. What is the best? Well, I guess there's no way for you to answer this unbiased because you're such a big A's fan. But what are some of your favorite MLB on-field cap designs?
Of all
who
time?
is doing it the best? Of all time, sure, and then also currently.
All time, the number one is always going to be the 1969 to 1991 Montreal Expos. It's a landslide on that one. The funny thing that always goes back for me and the Yankees is, just the history behind the logo itself. Like I understand the iconography behind it, but then for me, my brain always reverts back to who actually created the classic NY logo. And that was the jewelry company, Tiffany Brand and Company, or Tiffany and Company, because it had to do with the first ever New York police officer that was killed in the line of duty by a gun. Tiffany and Company had made a pendant and then used the NY on the gravestone as well. The Yankees liked it so much, and so it kind of transitioned from there. Yeah, there's been some evolutionary detail, differences over the years for that. But to me, as a baseball guy, it's like, it's not so much the Yankees as, hey, it's this thing the Yankees kind of borrowed from this jewelry company. And that's not to put them down at all. But going forward from that, as far as like my personal favorites, Oakland A's road hat from 1993 to 2000 or 1994 to 2013. So all dark green, yellow A's logo. I'm still mad that they got rid of that one in favor of the white logo with the yellow outline that they wear on the road these days. What else we got here? I dig the Mets, but at the same time, it's like, it's the same thing. It goes back to the New York Giants before they moved to San Francisco. So they were a bunch of biters and took a really great logo and ran with it. Milwaukee Brewers, the ball and mitt logo, the MB, classic logo. And, aside from that, it's just a stunning representation of visual advertising when that was introduced in the 1970s. And I still say, as far as sports logos of all time in the creativity department, top 3 for sure.
Yeah. Anytime they get creative with the letters and use it to create something more than that and actually evoke a feeling. I no pun intended, but hats off to them.
God, boo.
Yeah,
boo.
I had to do it. We cut the line there.
I knew it was coming, but it's still funny.
Every time. That is our sign to end this conversation here. Benjamin Christensen, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find your musings, opinions about baseball, hats, and other things?
I'm always on Twitter. My personal account is Shaka Brody, SHAKABRODIE. And then I run the Hat Club Twitter account. So HATCLUB. I'm on there basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No off days for this guy.
All right. You heard it, listeners. You can go in Sunday night. Say, Benjamin, I need your advice right now. Hit him on the Hat Club line. He will answer.
I will.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Okay, Bobby, we are joined now by the one and only James Hollis, the owner of a top 10 Twitter handle, Snotty Drippin', over on Twitter, and he's a former basketball blogger and general hat fitted cap aficionado. James, how's it going?
Dun, 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 dun. I wanted to hear like a little beat come in. Like Wonder Woman, every time they saw Wonder Woman in the movies, I had the music behind her. I was waiting for the music to show up, but I guess you guys aren't that well produced yet.
No,
so
that's post production, James.
That's
Come
post?
on, put some
damn.
respect on my post production creds.
My bad. I'm good, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
I cannot believe that we are, meeting you and having this conversation and somehow not introducing you as a part of basketball Twitter lore as the as one half of me and Temecula. But here we are. We're gonna talk about fucking baseball hats instead.
I didn't know you knew about that. I was gonna bring it up on air, but you already beat me to the punch. I was gonna say you have to Google Temecula James Holis and see what comes up. But yeah, that's pretty funny.
Well, to all of our listeners, please, if you don't know, now you know. Please Google.
Yeah,
James.
Last name is Holas, and then Temecula, and you'll see something from like 2012. I think it's pretty funny.
Well, thanks you for making some time for us. You are someone who, as I understand it, are a bit of an amateur hat collector, but this is a passion of yours, and you have an Instagram account dedicated to it, and you tweet about it a lot. Can you tell us a bit about your background and why like the fitted cap scene called to you so much?
Honestly, during the pandemic, it really kind of caught me. I'm a fledgling collector, and compared to some of the guys I see on Facebook and on Instagram, there are guys who have 5,000-6,000 hats, and like it blows my mind. So yeah, I started collecting really maybe October, November, and I have a pretty modest but pretty good collection. You see my Instagram. I'm proud of it, So yeah, man, it's just let's be real. Last year was tough for everybody, and a lot of stuff from home, isolated from friends, and not going out about. And I just I think I found the website hatclub.com, and I'm looking at it. It's some really nice hats, man. And I bought one or two. I found out about the Design Collective, where they, these are non-team affiliated hats that, these really original creative designers were coming up with like mascots and different designs. And I was like, oh, these are nice. And then, I kind of got into it a little more and more. And like February, the bug really bit me. And yeah, man, it's a really cool community. Sports fans and non-sports fans alike are kind of commingling. And it's interesting to see a very interesting dynamic between the diehard baseball traditionalist fans and then like people like me, an interloper. I'm an ex-Braves fan. I'm talking way back in the day. I'm an old head, dude. I'm old. But yeah, I was a Braves fan I'm talking Sid Bream, Terry Pendleton. So back then, dude. And I kind of lost my love for following baseball while I was in the military. I was overseas and stuff. But yeah, baseball hats started catching me, and yeah, I'm knee deep in the collecting now.
So there are a few things I want to dive into a little bit in what you said just now. But first, before we do, can you describe like your personal style of hat? Like, what is a James style of hat where you see that listing and it's an immediate purchase?
There's almost no like definitive style. I got all different colorways. I don't have a single team that I really like or dislike. So I got like, I'm looking at my collection right now. I got Atlanta, I got a bunch of Rockies. I got Oakland A's with the Stomper. I got the Bears. So there's no definitive style. It's more for me about the logo and the color. And it's I have some black and white. I have some just regular colors, and then I have some pretty wild ones. Hat Club dropped a Volt. It's an Oakland hat that's like a blaze red and like voltage yellow, electric yellow, and it's a really cool looking hat. So for me, it's more about just I know immediately if I see a hat, I'm like, oh, I got to have that one. Or some of them I see like it's a really popular hat that everybody's going for, and it's it's real high, and I'm like, I'm not a fan of that one. I'm good. So I don't know. It's that's one thing about hat collecting. It's a very individualistic thing. So yeah, man, it's more for me about the logos and then the unique colorways.
It is kind of interesting because you talk about that community versus that that individual style, the individual style that like appeals to you, right? And that's something that kind of has caught my attention of the hat community, in that there isn't necessarily one drop, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like one style, one cap that everyone is trying to get. it feels like it has a lot to do with your personal connection to the style, the team, whatever it is. And there's been a lot of comparison to, sneaker culture, over the last decade or so, and how fitted caps are really coming into their own right now. I'm curious what you think about that comparison and just why you think fitted caps in particular are really like popping off right now.
It's a fascinating evolution I've seen in just the last few months. Like I said, I started collecting. It's been less than a year. I have 80 or 90 hats, right? And that sounds almost like a lot, but it's not that many compared to, like I said, a lot of these guys I see. I'm at the very low end for almost a year collecting. But again, the pandemic had everybody isolated. People were sitting at home, couldn't go out, and I believe that was a big reason. Not only did collectors get together, but the industry kind of took off. That one side I was saying, Hat Club, they started doing I believe one of the guys came up with one of the first hats where they had the pink undervisor, and for some reason people really caught the pink UV really caught on. They were calling them pinkies, and they kind of caught on. I remember when I first started collecting last fall, a new hat would drop and it would take a day or two to sell out. Now within seconds, literally seconds, they're all gone. And it's fascinating because it has a lot of parallels with the hat community. I mean, the shoe community, like we were talking about. There is a growing, burgeoning resale market. I'm talking $200-$300 for a hat that retails for $45.
Yeah,
like this is a real thing that's happening, right? And it's like people are botting. They're running bots on the sites to get all the hats, and now the sites are running bot protection. It's a thing, right? It's becoming a thing. It went from just a niche, very small community thing where guys are like really like to it's some guys are trying to, there's designers who are getting hired by lids and they're doing different colorways, crazy flips. So it's been a warp speed evolution, I think, brought on by the pandemic where people needed an outlet that was relatively cheap. $40 for a hat's not bad. It sounds like, you buy enough of them, it's gonna be bad, but $40 versus $200 for sneakers. So, it's been fascinating watching it go from just like the diehard fans and then like the small niche of hat collectors to it's went mainstream. I think Complex did an article on them maybe in April about how hat collecting was growing. And since then, it's been like growing like wildfire.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of a, you've alluded to and joked about how baseball fans are kind of traditionalists and how they view hats, and they like the hats that have been on a field, basically, on a player's head.
Yeah, on fields, yep.
But there has definitely been a kind of jokey tension in the baseball community about like seeing some of these new era designs specifically coming out and people being like, this looks so bad, this looks so gaudy, this looks so busy. Can you kind of describe the difference between how people who only watch baseball or who are baseball fans that are not part of the hat community or fans or think of it as fashion like yourself, and people who understand these trends a little bit better?
So it's not even joking. I've had people who've been very aggressive in how they approach it, and they really feel kind of put upon, and they feel aggrieved that all these interlopers are stepping in on the baseball community. I've had people like, they said, this guy was, and he was being dead serious. I laughed on, it was online. There's a Facebook group all about New Era's Collectors Club, and they people trade hats and sell hats. And he was like, "It's appropriation. People like you come in here." And, I swear to God, he was like, "This is like," and I
the
laughed.
irony of appropriating the word appropriation is just too much for me.
When I did I did like LMAO, and I put like laugh, and he goes, "What's so funny?" I thought it was just being. He goes, "Yeah, people like you come in and you appropriate. You don't even care about. You don't give a damn about the sport. You don't care about the traditions." And honestly, the baseball I do watch, I don't give a damn about it. I really feel like the unwritten, quote unquote, unwritten rules of baseball are kind of silly, and it should be a lot more fun and open, whatever. That's But there's definitely a schism. I think a lot of the traditional fans kind of begrudgingly just accept it. There's a lot of old school people, especially when the pink and the pastel colors come out. That's fruity and that's just especially when they do non-traditional colors for teams. That's just not right. And so there's definitely an old guard that tries to gatekeep a little bit, but the doors have been kicked in. The tide has just kind of ran over that undercurrent that's tried to shake their fist and say this isn't right traditional. Because there's casual baseball fans who just buy all kind of teams, all kind of colors. There's a non-team oriented fan, right? Because I said the design collectives, they're not team affiliated at all. They just have like the wild. I just got a hat today that has a logo it's a part bear, part moose, part killer whale. That's the logo because it's some it's and it's it's like it has like a maple leaf on it, so it looks like it's Canadian. But it's a really nice hat. It's black with a red underbill, and it's a really creative design. $40 I paid for it, and so yeah, there's a whole like a whole design side of it. People just like creative stuff. So yeah, that the traditionalists, some of them kind of like you said, some of them are joking, some are dead serious, and it makes them livid that people are appropriating their baseball culture. But whatever.
What is it that you think? And this is obviously just speaking from your perspective, but what is it about fitted caps in particular that is calling to this broad community of often young people who may have no connection to the sport of baseball, have no interest necessarily, or maybe were a fan in the past but grew out of it like yourself, but still see this as some form of expression or whatever. What sense do you get that why people are gravitating towards this sort of thing as a form of self-expression?
Because it is a certain way to bring people together. Like you said, like when a certain drop comes, it's even though let's say they drop 300 hats, that's not a lot of hats, and 1,000 people are going for them. So a little bit of exclusivity, and you kind of feel like part of the in crowd that this is happening. I think a lot of people just like the style, the different colors and the different logos. It's like I have a lot of Marlins logos that are throwback logos to when there were the old school logo.
Yeah,
and like
it's a
people
great
say,
logo.
"Oh man, that's." And yeah, like that kind of. I have a couple of Expos hats. You know what I mean? The old Expos logos, and it's just different colorways. So it's a form of expression. Obviously, you could it's a style thing that you can get shirts and t-shirts and sweatshirts to match your hats and your sneakers. Especially, so it does go hand in hand in sneaker culture because a lot of these, especially younger guys who are hat collectors, are also really into sneakers, and they that's their thing. They got the color combos going, so it's a style thing, the fashion thing, and even among non-collectors, every day, I put on a different hat and I go to work or go out, and people will stop. Oh, where's that? What is that from? That's a really nice hat. So it's eye-catching. It's conversation starter. So yeah, it's definitely something that went from being a very niche kind of you're wearing a baseball hat, you run out to the store, to it's fashionable. Hip hop makes it fashionable. I've seen a lot of rappers now they're going on TV and they're rocking hats that people are trying to pick up from different sites and I think they're actually working with the hat designers and the different companies. They're getting Travis Scott has his own kind of hats. The Migos have their own like Atlanta Braves hats with the little peach on it. So it's fashion, it's mainstream fashion. So it's giving guys a kind of an inexpensive $40 isn't a lot to way to look fly, and it makes them feel good. And again, they're chatting on Facebook groups. They're talking on Instagram. They're sharing. So like it's a community thing, it's a kind of a small but growing community.
Yeah, we spoke also on this episode to someone who does work at Hat Club, Benjamin Christensen, and he kind of talked about it as a wearable piece of art. And you're so right in that, like, if someone is wearing a hat, you're probably making eye contact with them at first, and you're automatically going to catch their hat. So I love the way you put that as a conversation starter. People bring up your hat all the time. But I want to dig into.
I'm a little upset you guys had Ben on here, and you didn't have us on here together because Ben is actually a friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is he really?
Wow.
Ben, so it's funny. I was on Twitter. I got a lot of followers on Twitter. I used to be a writer and stuff. Me and Ben were talking basketball. I had no idea he was with Hat Club until I started talking to him about basketball, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, hey, my other account. And I saw that. So before the hat, I knew about the hat thing. I got in the hat community. Me and Ben is my homie.
Okay, well, so that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram of these two conversations that we've been having, but still serendipity. So maybe you could pass a message along from one half of the podcast to the other if you want.
I will, but I'm also mad at you for not having me on with Ben. So screw you guys.
Oh no, Alex,
we didn't know you were buddies.
He's turned on us.
You are now the nemesis. You're my enemies.
James, I wanted to ask you about something. So who do you conceive of as someone who's like just recently coming along to this, making more of a hobby out of it in this past year since the pandemic? Who do you conceive of as like hat tastemakers? Is it people like Hat Club? Is it the designers themselves? Is it more like rappers and other pop cultural figures? Who do you think of as like, oh, that person likes this hat, so it's hot? in the hat community.
It's funny. It's easy to say rappers because like honestly, I just saw I see guys like even like Kemba Walker with fitted hat heads, and you'll see just pop up rappers. So you can say a guy like the Migos, and sure they're the big overall tastemakers. And I'm not being biased because Ben's my homie and has hat clubs where I kind of really started. But dude, they've been at the cutting edge. They start off with the pink UVs. They just did this whole drop called the Ox Pack where they had hats that were kind of themed after certain classic hip hop albums. And like people are going nuts for these hats. So Hat Club has definitely been at the kind of the forefront, but then there's also other sites too, that kind of pick up on what they do. So it's all about trying to be innovative without going over the line where people are like, oh, that's stupid. You tried too hard. Right. I think I don't know if you guys saw this Lids or MLB tried to do some kind of like city things where they were putting these patches all over these hats from each state. And they were ridiculous. Like they got laughed off the internet. They pulled them off the site.
I think it was at that point that we were like, all right, we got to do an episode about hats. Cause like everybody's talking about hats. Every day we wake up and someone else is talking about hats. So that was sort of like the first line. The precursor to this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very thin line, right? Because you want to push the envelope, you want to be creative and have your stuff out there. Like Hat Club did a whole thing called Sugar Shack, these pastel-colored Easter-looking hats, and it looked kind of weird on the site. And you start seeing them on models and on people. They're showing them on their Instagram. They look really good. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And they sold the hell out. And now you got people on eBay selling those hats for $300 a piece, which is absurd, but people are buying them. So, yeah, it's they have their in-house designers. I'm gonna shout out like you said, Hat Club. They got the guy. His name is like John 800, and another guy. Whatever. They have in-house designers that really are kind of pushing the envelope. They had a guy named Manolo Prado. I've never heard the name before. I thought this is some guy, someone on Facebook. He came out with a line of hats they were selling. They're on eBay for $300 now. And now he has a major I think he has an ink to deal with like Lids to design their hats. So like this is becoming a thing, and it's really fascinating to watch. I came in the game a little late, so I watched it take off, and I have a kind of an outsider perspective because I haven't been doing this long. So it's interesting. I wonder how far is it going to go.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what you see is coming out. Like, is there anything that you want to see coming out of this culture? Like whether it's designs, whether it's how it integrates itself elsewhere into pop culture. Like, how do you kind of see this evolving over the next year or two? Because it's not a new concept, fitted caps,
for sure.
But the trend, the fashion trend is really kind of novel just in the last couple of years.
Honestly, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with the fact that it's becoming so popular, even as a new guy myself, so I sound hypocritical, because it's almost becoming inaccessible to the common guy. Yeah. Because guys, they're getting the bots out there. They're starting to get influencers are starting to get involved in it. So those TikTok guys and those TikTok kids or the hippity hoppity are
here. We are on our lawn yelling outside.
So and I like nice hats. I want to get nice hats, but I can't get them because they hit the site and they're gone. But I also think ebb and flow. So I think it's probably a lot of these guys who are into it right now are going to find something new in a couple months, whatever. But it's always going to be robust. People are into it. That's a good thing. The only thing I really want out of it, I like the fact that the designers are always pushing the envelope. Don't always go back to the old stuff, right? Like when I first started, side patches have been a thing, and some people hate it. Traditionally, this is really interesting side patches. I like the fact that they mess around with them. They just did something called a beer pack, where like they had hats modeled after brands of beer, which sounds ridiculous, but they actually look great. A couple sites have done that. I like the fact that the sites are competing with each other while pushing each other to be better. So they're trying to do different things, and some of them are even kind of copying each other. But that's what artists do. You kind of take from other guys. So I can't say I like the fact when I first hit it, I was buying all kind of stuff. I'm becoming more discerning. So now it's something that has to kind of catch my eye, and they're still doing it. They're still doing it. It's just fun. It's fun. I want people to have fun with it. I hate when people, it sucks that the common guy, has to go on eBay and pay $150 for a hat. That's ridiculous. And I wish they can do it, but there's nothing you can do. That's what capitalism and free market does, right? So,
yeah. How do we avoid this becoming the sneakers app experience for every single person who wants to purchase something?
Honestly, that's again, I'm in that, that Facebook group has literally like maybe 5,000-6,000 people in it. And, I don't really sit there and chat room all day. I see it. And every day people are just so distraught. Like, I really wanted that. And I couldn't get it. I logged on. I saw it because they're doing bot protection. I saw the capture. And while I was in line waiting to pay, it's like a queue, they sold out under my nose. So it's heading down that road, and it sucks. I'm seeing people say, hey, man, I'm out of the hat game. It sucks. I can't get any of the nice hats I wanted. And the resellers are taking them. And there's so much frustration among some of the OGs in the hat industry, and it sucks. It does. But this is kind of life, and it's going to ebb and flow. And I think it's maybe these companies are going to start saying, well, we need to get in stock in the thousands, not the 800, because people want these hats. Yeah. They're doing pre-orders. That's what I do want to see. A lot of sites are doing pre-orders, but they're showing the design and say, hey, you have 3 days. Every order you want, you're going to give you guaranteed to get them because we're going to put in an order. That's really cool, and that's something that that I think that collectors and buyers really like.
Yeah. It's growing pains. I mean, it when something gets popular at scale this fast, it's really hard to like make that user experience perfect for everyone. Do you only wear fitted caps? Do you wear snapbacks? Do you wear dad hats? Is it just fitted caps? Is that like the
don't
only...
insult me by asking about a dad hat because I'm a grown man. No, so I do like, to me, fitted's the only way to go. One reason is I got a giant head. I wear 7 3/4, which for listeners who don't know, that's a really big head. If I wear a snapback, it's like on the last 2 little things, and like they're wheezing, trying to hold on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a strictly fitted guy. No, and strictly New Era actually. I tried a couple other companies when I first started buying them. They just don't seem right, don't feel right. So I'm a little bit of a snob that way. But yeah, just fitted.
Is there a particular design or logo or something that like you really gravitate toward? Like even in your collection, is there one where you're like, I'm just like running out and I just need to throw something on my head? Like this is my one or this is my two.
Your daily driver.
I don't have one of those. That's part of my love for my collection and why I'm going to keep it around 80 or 90. I have them displayed in a certain way, so all of them are on display. I don't have hatches stashed somewhere. And so when I first started, I don't know if you guys heard, it's called the LSD Tiger. So the Detroit has an alternative swinging tiger one, right? It's like a little cartoon tiger with the bat. He's swinging. He looks like he's out of his mind off drugs. That caught my eye, and I got 10 of those. I'm a big fan of the Cardinal bird logos. So I got the Cardinals, like 2 on the bat, single one on the bat, the 1 swinging the bat. I like the Cardinal logos. And I got a few Marlins hats and a few of the Stomper, right? The Oakland A's, where it's the elephant head with the 2 bats crossed. I got a couple of those, but mostly it's the swinging tiger. It's something about that just caught me. But other than that, man, I'm all over the place. Lately, I got a couple of the Arizona snakehead where it's holding the ball in the mouth. Those are really dope logos. Got a couple of those. So it's all about the logo, man.
Question for you, James, specifically about baseball. I know you're not much of a baseball fan anymore, but do you think that a team being young and trendy can drive hat logo sales specifically, or do you think it really is just logos?
I think if a team came out and they had a night where they put on a cutting edge new colorway or an alternative logo, like an alternate logo from back in the day, like say Detroit came out with it would blow the lid off of the hat game. I think it would really go mainstream. So yeah, I definitely think like these the Connect jerseys and hats that came out lately, right? That's been a kind of hot thing because if they look good, people are all over them. Then then teams like Arizona come out that looks like they just made out of MS Paint in 30 minutes. So I do definitely think a forward-thinking team with a creative marketing department to really cash in on this by some of these alternative hats, saying, okay, well we can get a jersey out that night. MLB will approve it, and we'll rock one of these other hats.
Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
I think of a team like the Padres specifically, where there's like a lot of young, fun guys. Like if they're like hot among baseball fans. Like baseball fans love tuning into them. But I'm just curious as to like, does it matter that Fernando Tatis is really fun to watch? Like, could that drive hat sales? I don't know. I'm not sure.
And you guys can tell me that, because I know that's one thing about baseball is that like a lot of these great baseball players, you go out by them on the street and they're just not known because baseball is just not like basketball where it's 5 guys on the court. They put this guy at the face of the franchise, the face of the league, and like you go, oh crap, that's Kevin Durant, and plus he's 7 foot tall, so it's a little different. Well, baseball, I've heard these names, these guys, and you just don't see them on TV. You see them hitting a home run, but that's from you're 80 feet away and you see a guy swinging the bat. So it's not quite the same, but maybe you would think baseball would take advantage of the fact that they have these young, kind of flashy guys, maybe breaking the old stodgy image of baseball because they need to. That's, I think, a lot of people turn away from baseball because it has this kind of traditionalist, old school feel, and people don't want that. This is we're in 2021. People want to have fun and be out there.
But James, they would alienate all the stodgy traditionalists, and where would they go then? Come on.
They would go to bed early and have the bouquet special like they should because they're like 80. It's funny, every time I see a tweet where like a guy does something, like he knocks a home run and then he takes an extra second look at it, right? And he's showing up the pitcher, and then there's always some guy, this is a disgrace to the game. He needs to get drilled next time he's up there. And I'm just like, oh, he literally sat there for 2 seconds and watched the ball fly.
Yeah.
The pitcher strikes the guy out and does like a backflip, and that's not a big deal. The pitcher has histrionics, but the batter hits it and like flips his bat a little aggressively. And I'm seeing these, 80-year-old sports writers tweeting like the guy deserves the death penalty. So it's such a strange thing that as a non-fan, the hills that they choose to die on.
It's just a series of contradictions, man. It's like it doesn't really make any sense. You don't know which way is up. If one guy is mad, then people support him being mad. That's just the tradition of baseball. And, we're trying to cut into that a little bit every week on the show. So you're in the right place for sharing a take like that.
And I'm going to make sure I tune into you guys from now on because you guys obviously... No, I appreciate you having me on. I just met homie the other day. So, I mean, you guys obviously... you've made a fan. I'll be in there.
Well, James, thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to plug? Is there like an IG handle where people can see all of your latest like hat cops? Like, where can people find you?
Yeah, man, you guys can follow me on Twitter. It's at Snotty Drippin', which is an homage to the great Scottie Pippen. So it's not Snotty with the Y, it's Snotty with the IE. And then it's not dripping with the ING. It's just an E at the end. And then, I did make an Instagram just like in February or March for all my hats, basically. I think it's lids_N_kicks, even though there's like one pair of kicks on there and all the rest is hats. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you find me, you find me. And all I do is post like the hat I wear every day and like the matching T-shirt, because that's another unintended consequence. I have to buy a T-shirt to match every hat. So
yeah, right. You got to complete the outfit.
Honestly, I can't just go out with a fly hat and a whack T-shirt. So I got like 100 T-shirts in my closet, which is pretty excessive. So I need to get a life. But yeah, basically come on Twitter. I talk basketball still, and I love just to go back and forth, talk whatever topics of the day, and I will start talking baseball because you motherfuckers got me into it.
That's good to hear, man. Thanks so much for your time, James. This was awesome.
Nah, man, I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Appreciate you.
That's a double edge, just a knife. And I don't like to fight till I'm fighting. Revenge in the air makes my lungs sick. Chopper in the sky like a gun trick. Clips on clips like Mike. It's really I see both sides like Chanel.
Right, that was wonderful. Thank you to both Benjamin and James for joining us. My head is already brimming with ideas for our next cap collection.
Come on.
That wasn't even.
You didn't intend that pun? Are you serious?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Wow.
I'll see myself out here.
Tipping pitches, more like tipping caps.
That was arguably a million times worse. I feel really vindicated that, like, neither of them really seemed to enjoy some of the caps that New Era were dropping. Like, both admitted that, like, there's some really trash stuff out there, which is nice because I think that we as fans tend to paint really broad strokes and say, no, New Era is fucking with the originals. Like, what was wrong with just a classic A's hat? Why'd you need to turn the logo upside down? And it's like, well, there there are people behind these designs who actually know that there are people out there who are going to buy these things.
Yeah.
And that's valuable to us.
The real evolution that when I'll believe that hats have gotten as big as sneakers is when people are like, no, actually the gaudiest, ugliest designs are cool.
Yeah.
That will be the day that New Era starts being the cool trend for like TikTok people.
I think we're there, right?
I should say the day that the New Era, city designs that were clowned are like suddenly a collector's item. I know that New Era makes a lot of the hats that, like places like Hat Club design. I meant the specific version of New Era caps that a Tipping Pitches listener is thinking when I bring this up, the ones that everybody is making fun of and memeing on Twitter.
I can't say personally that I ever foresee myself either ironically or unironically wearing a cap, wearing an A's cap that has like a palm tree on it and says the Bay on the side. I mean, really grasping at straws here, guys. But I am looking forward to the day where fitted cap Twitter finds out about our hat that we're selling and just roasts us to all hell, because that would frankly be the best publicity that we would need.
No, this could be the day right here.
There you go.
We are yet to find out. We're just going to put this podcast out in the ether. We appreciate you listening. If you're listening this late in the show, you probably know that we put out new designs. But just a reminder, tiny.cc/nationalize, a couple new unionized and minor shirts, like we've talked about a couple times now, a No Billionaires in Baseball ball cap. You can use promo code AROD or promo code JLO to get 15% off your purchase. I've thought a lot about next promo codes. I think we should diverge from the whole like celebrity magazine cover, or counterpoint. We should lean further in, and the next one should be like Benefer.
I'm not giving that man airtime on this podcast.
No,
whoever makes JLo happy, I'm happy for her. But
promo code.
I don't need to respect
Angelina.
Yeah, app. All right, there you go. I'm here for it. Billy Bob Thornton.
Promo code Free Britney. Actually, okay. Well, we're talking about Britney Spears, so that's a good indication to end this baseball podcast. Anything else that you want to remind people of, Alex?
No, but if you enjoyed this pod, if you enjoy our podcast in general, tell a friend, tell a family member, tell a loved one, and if you really love it,
tell an enemy. Maybe your enemy will like our show as well.
Exactly. We like we have always said, we're Big Tent Podcast.
We're the podcast for the people.
Exactly. Feel free to drop us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you have gripes, if you have favorite cap designs, anything that we missed on this podcast, please hit us up at tipping_pitches on Twitter, tippingpitchespod@gmail.com. You know where to find us.
You can even call and voice those concerns out loud, 785-422-5881. That is forever the number of our voicemail. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back with super duper cold reactions to the trade deadline a week and a half late next week.
My pocket's snug. They can't hold my 7. They ban my Visa, my Amex and MasterCards.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alex Rodriguez. Tipping Pitches.
Tipping Pitches.
This is the one that I love the most.
Tipping Pitches.
So we'll see you next week. See ya!